So, David, today's episode is about something that's really sensitive to talk about when we're talking about cancer.
Ooh, intriguing.
Yeah, it's about what a cancer diagnosis does to someone's financial life. Not just is treatment expensive, but what happens to your job, your housing, your insurance, all the stuff that's kind of holding your life together while you're trying to get through the treatment.
I feel like this is something everybody deals with, everybody worries about, but it's hard to say it out loud, and it's hard to even know who to talk to about it. I feel like people feel like they're just supposed to deal with this privately and don't know how to bring it into the medical space. It's not something people want to talk to their doctors about.
Yeah, it can get really complicated and frustrating. By the way, this is Smarter Than Cancer, and I'm Hajar Aldas.
And I'm David Hoffman.
So, David, a few episodes back, you produced a story about the effects of stress on patient results, and today I'm diving into financial stress specifically. I spoke to some people here at Roswell Park, and they explained to me the science behind why financial stress would impact patient health outcomes.
I'm excited. Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
I found people just crying at my desk about their finances when family members or even themselves, if they were diagnosed.
Tameka Brooks is a community outreach manager and a financial empowerment coach at Roswell Park.
I came to Roswell Park with a background in banking and community education.
When people were coming to you, what kind of financial issues were going on?
Often it was not understanding their insurance. It's not always the lack of insurance, but not even understanding their insurance as a whole. You're in a position where you have the person who might be diagnosed and their caregiver, who could be their spouse or child, who now, is there on a regular basis caring for them and losing hours at work. So the lack of income, the decrease in their household income is really impactful. Also, often what I find, there was a lack of knowledge when it comes to finances. And so they were already in a position where they were behind in their payments. They were trying to catch up. And now that you're diagnosed, they had to figure out, am I going to purchase my pharmaceutical or am I going to buy food? And no one should be in that position.
Tameka has a rare insight into patients' lives because she's perhaps the only person who is allowed into the patient's treatment plan and their financial reality. It's an unusually intimate part of care that's not talked about nearly enough when we talk about healthcare.
What surprises me the most is how people assume they're alone. The patients, they don't have a willingness to speak to their doctor not about their finances, but just letting them know and making them aware that they're not able to move forward with treatment because of maybe a lack of insurance or that they cannot afford it. I know that it's not necessarily normal to go to your doctor to talk about your financial situation. And I wonder if it's because they feel, well, if I tell them I don't have enough, my treatment might not be standard. That may change the type of treatment that I'm receiving. And I explained to them that that's not the case, especially not here at Roswell Park. I think that they have an easier time working with me, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm always encouraging them to speak to the doctor, that you have a voice in that space and you need to let the doctor know that you are not able to afford treatment, or you're not able to afford the physical therapy, or you're not able to afford the pharmaceuticals, so that now we can find a different journey for you, a different treatment for you, or some type of resolution, whether it be a grant or so on and so forth. So that's been really surprising to me.
Yeah, I could imagine that it would be a lot harder to talk to a doctor than it is someone at a financial office about the financial situation, because I think there's a lot of shame around it. And then because of the power imbalance between doctor and patient, the shame is amplified.
The reality is that patients have been asked, and fewer than 10% of them want to have this discussion with their doctor.
That's Dr. Anurag Singh, the director of head and neck and lymphoma radiation services at Roswell Park.
I'm not qualified to have an opinion about why that may be the case, but there may be some level of embarrassment. There may be some level of expectation that my physician is here to cure my cancer. He's not here to talk to me about my rent. As a physician, I was never taught anything about financial concerns of patients. I would have concerns if we just, without any further education, started having physicians have these discussions, because I think it's just something that we're not qualified to do.
Dr. Singh is different, though, because he does have more insight into his patients' financial lives. And that's because he's part of a financial navigation program at Roswell Park designed specifically to help patients manage costs and reduce stress. The program grew out of his own research on what's called financial toxicity.
Generally speaking, financial toxicity encompasses all of the toxicity that patients experience as a result of financial stress or pressures. Now, that could be out-of-pocket costs for treatments itself. It could be loss of income. It could be challenges to maintaining their lifestyle, for instance, paying their mortgage, buying food. All of those things get wrapped up into an umbrella term called financial toxicity. The way that I think about financial toxicity, because it's very difficult to know what's stressful for one person versus another. We all know or have friends who are completely unconcerned about finances and may not be as well-to-do, but we also have folks who are fairly well-to-do or would be perceived as fairly well-to-do, but are very concerned about their finances, even under normal circumstances, much less when they're being treated for cancer.
We're going to get to what you found in your research, but what led you to pursue research in this area to begin with? Like, what got you interested in financial toxicity?
So globally, we have a group of researchers at Roswell that is interested in cancer stress biology. I'm fortunate enough to be one of the leaders of that group, and we look at what are the impacts of stress from the molecular to the tumor microenvironmental or cellular level, all the way up to the whole patient. So I got into financial toxicity research through that lens, where I'm looking at what is the global patient quality of life and what are the things that impact that. I read a survey many years ago that really, quite frankly, it blew my mind. What this poll said, that 50% of survey respondents were more worried about going bankrupt than being cured.
Wow.
And given the choice, they would opt not to be bankrupt versus be alive. And that's over 50% of people. What that showed me is that I was thinking about this completely wrong. And what's important to the patient may not have been what I had assumed was important to the patient. So from that, we started looking into, okay, who are these 50%? Who are the people who are really worried about it?
When Dr. Singh came across these poll results indicating that people's top worry was financial burden, he had already been asking his own patients to take a survey with questions related to their feelings about their financial situation. And using that survey, his research team was able to conduct a study.
What we've done is we've just asked people the question, a single question that asks, how concerned are you about your finances? And the answers are none, a little, somewhat, and very. The first two categories, where you're not very concerned, we consider that normal. And the last two, we consider that you have financial stress. Now, note, we're not getting into the weeds of why you have the financial stress. You're a cancer patient, and we understand all the things that go into that. But we're just saying, on a patient level, how are you dealing? How are you coping? One of the things that's interesting about that survey instrument is that it was designed such that the questions wouldn't impact each other. But what we've discovered is that if you're worried about your finances, your global health is less. So everything else on the survey appears to be correlated if you have financial stress. For those who don't, then things behave as they were designed to behave and are independent of each other.
And how were you able to measure for this? Like, tell me more about how you conducted this research.
We did a lot of things to even out the groups, and finally what we ended up doing was match pairing the groups. So we said, okay, for every patient who's worried about their finances, we're going to find another patient with similar age, gender, tumor, smoking history, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to pair those patients together. So that's a match pair analysis. And so really the only thing that should be different about that group is whether or not they had financial concerns. And what we found is that there was a huge decrease in overall survival in the patients who were concerned about their finances. And that was really fascinating because people had noticed that before, that patients who were experiencing financial toxicity may have worse outcomes. But in those scenarios, there were open questions. For instance, was there increased time to diagnosis? Were they getting to see the same types of doctors? Were they getting the same kinds of treatment? In our case, a lot of those things were taken off the table because their physician was the same. It was me. And we knew what their time to diagnosis was. We knew what, from the time to symptoms to the time of diagnosing the cancer to initiating treatment was, and we could control for all of those variables. And despite all that, it was still hugely statistically significant. And here we had a real-time readout of something at the beginning of treatment. You're worried about your finances, and that's appears to be leading to decreased overall survival. Now, I told you that if you're worried about your finances, all your other global quality of life metrics are impacted. It's probably too simplistic to say it was just the financial worry, because the financial worry was impacting a lot of other things as well.
What is the medical explanation for why that's the case? Like why financial stress would affect your survival rate?
There isn't a direct answer. We know that there are things called stress hormones, and we know that when you are experiencing a stress, certain things go up and certain things go down. Things that go up may include steroid hormones like cortisol. It may include beta adrenergic agents, norepinephrine and epinephrine go up. In the acute setting, say you're running away from a tiger, that makes a lot of sense. But when that stress becomes chronic, then it becomes counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish, which in this case would be being prepared to accept cancer therapy and have your own systems be optimized to fight the cancer.
Is this widely accepted? Meaning, are more resources going to further research and then also for alleviating the issues?
So many researchers across the country and across the world are very interested in this topic and are looking for better ways to manage financial toxicity, better ways to measure financial toxicity. And in each country, because healthcare systems vary so much by country, the mitigation strategies are going to be a little bit different. So if you're in a single payer system, you have fewer out-of-pocket costs, and you may focus more on trying to keep the patient able to work, et cetera. In our system, we have the worst combination of things to produce financial stress in our patients. We have significant numbers of out-of-pocket costs. We have significantly toxic therapies, either chemotherapy, radiation therapy, surgery, all of which can impact people's ability to work. And then that ability to work can be a double whammy, so to speak, because it also limits your capacity to earn. But so many of us, our insurance is through work. So if you're unable to work and you lose your insurance, now you have increased out-of-pocket costs as well as decreased income. And obviously, all of those things can be very challenging.
Are you ever shocked by the treatment decisions patients make when they're dealing with financial stress? Like, I can't get those poll results out of my mind that you mentioned earlier, that 50% of people would choose to not live over go bankrupt. Does knowing that change how you approach the conversation with patients?
You have to deal with the reality of what the patients are experiencing, even if it's surprising to you. And the reality is that this is the way people feel, and knowing that this is the baseline, it does change how I talk to patients. And there are patients who express these kind of concerns, and I will tell them, look, I understand that, but you have a head and neck cancer, and head and neck cancers become very symptomatic if left untreated. And no one wants to experience that if they can at all avoid it, regardless of what the financial implications are. But now that we have Tameka and we have the financial navigation, it's a much easier process to say, look, I'm going to help you address these concerns through our financial navigator and the other financial resources that are available at Roswell Park, including financial counseling and charity care and everything else that we do here.
So, Tameka, when Dr. Singh forwards you a patient that could use your services, what can you realistically help them with? Like, let's say it's a patient who is undergoing intense treatment and they can't work for a bit, but they also, don't have savings to fall back on. What are the steps that you would take in that situation?
Well, I would actually, and I've been in this situation. For starters, I want to know, do you rent or do you own your home? Because we want to make sure you continue to have shelter. So, whether we're calling your mortgage banker, whomever you got your mortgage through, or if you're renting, to reach out to those parties and to let them know your situation.
What's their risk? Like, okay, sorry to hear that, but we still need our rent.
Not necessarily. I haven't had that outcome. Most landlords are working with the patient who's been diagnosed. The one thing that I think is that a letter from your doctor is more meaningful than anything. It really is. It's proof that you're going through this, and your landlord, and not every landlord. I mean, some people will have a different, unfortunately, a poor outcome when it comes to speaking to their landlord. But overall, it can help you. It will, allow them to work with you and at least give you time to get the money or have you pay a percentage of it. With the promise that this is my treatment journey. Now, what can we do? It's a 30-day journey. Let's figure something out in this 30 days. There are organizations that will help you pay for your rent. There are organizations that will give you $2,500, for example, for anything that is not health related. So you can take that money and you can use it towards your insurance or your car payment or whatever it is. So first, I'm going to talk about shelter, because I find that housing is a big barrier for a lot of cancer patients that I come across. Utilities is pretty easy. They have a lot of help out there like HEAP and that's kind of across the board. They will help you. As far as the money, we're going to look at unemployment. So I'm tapping in to see what do you have that can help you financially. And then the Social Security disability. So just understanding that fully is super important.
So I guess my last question, if you had a magic wand and you can make one big structural change that would alleviate someone's pains before they get to you, what would that be?
Before they get to me. So I try to actually make the change in the community. Everyone needs financial education. I think it needs to start at kindergarten. You can teach your children, about financial health, financial wellness at such a young age. I would want financial education to be a part of the education system. We need to learn that. Because what that would do is it was open up communication. End of life. We don't want to talk about end of life. I would make it a part of the conversation in every household if I could. And I would say, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about even if you have a safe deposit box. You know how many people have come into the bank and said, my mom passed and all of her important documents are in this safe deposit box. You need 2 keys. If she's giving you one and you don't have the other, guess what? It's a whole process. And it takes you longer to be able to mourn your family member because now you're working hard to try to find the key to a safe deposit box where all her personal information is, right? But not only that, being able to prepay for, your funeral services and so on and so forth is super important. We need to talk about these things. And we need to talk about them, especially if we've been diagnosed and, we're in survivorship. We need to sit down with our families and say, let's prepare for this. God forbid we have another day where someone's diagnosed. Let's be ready. So for me, it's just the, opening up the conversation, finding, the way in each family that's comfortable for them, but starting the education very early.
Thanks for listening to Smarter Than Cancer, a production of Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center.
The show is written and produced by your hosts, Hajar Eldas and David Hoffman.
Production oversight by Peter Sosha.
Additional logistics and support from Michelle Eisenstein.
Our production partner for this series is Citizen Racecar.
Post-production by Gregory Schweitzer for DCP Entertainment.
Publication and promotion supervised by Candice Chanteloup. If you or your loved one has been diagnosed with cancer and would like to schedule an appointment with Roswell Park, please call 1-800-ROSWELL. That's 1-800-ROSWELL. Or visit us at roswellpark.org.
If you're enjoying this series, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out and tell us about your cancer story, and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes by filling out the form at roswellpark.org/smarterthancancer.
And if you know someone else who might find value in what we're doing, please tell them about it. You can listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.